Hey, it's Professor Kat, Dr. K here, back again for Chapter 7, which looks at victims' rights and the criminal justice system. So, most of you might be fairly familiar with victims' rights and how they exist today. However, this was not always the case. Victims' rights got a lot more attention in the last few decades, and we started to see more laws, more amendments put on the books to protect the rights of victims. If you look at our chapter summary, it talks about how mistreatment of victims used to be very common and whether or not this is still occurring. My opinion, based on my work with police departments and victims, is maybe. I think we've made great strides to get there, to give victims more of a say in the whole process, especially certain victims, such as victims of sex assault, that we're no longer making a big focus on where they were, what they were wearing, what is their background. Those things don't matter when it comes to being a victim of a sexual assault. Also, we look at victims that are considered privileged. We still, unfortunately, see this a lot, where a victim in a particular circumstance of a particular race, of a particular social class, may have more resources, more media attention than a victim of the exact same crime who is of a different social class, a different race, and perhaps a different background than the other victim. This isn't right, but unfortunately, it still occurs in many areas of our country today. All you have to do is open up a newspaper, look online. You're going to find still cases where victims are not treated properly or not treated the same as other victims. So my question I have for you is, how do we fix that? Is there a way to do that? Is this re-education of police departments? And like I mentioned in a previous video, I worked with all sorts of police officers. Some of them were great police officers. Some of them, they weren't what I expected out of a person who's taken an oath to protect and serve. We recently had a case here in the town I live in where a person with some mental challenges, who was an elderly person, was restrained by a police officer and her arm was broken. And the police officers laughed about it later back at the station. Unfortunately, these type of police officers still exist. Those officers are no longer on the force here. However, those things still happen. Our criminal justice system is not perfect. And so we see a lot of victims, and in the chapter we can look, let me look, there's a page. It's going to be slightly different than your online version, about people who are victims and have taken steps to start organizations that assist victims. So victim activism. One that is not listed in here, but that I remember is the parents of Gabby Petito. They started their own agency to help people who were missing and help get their families resources. And since I've already been through it, they're sharing that with others. This is box 7.1 in your book, talking about the Me Too movement. college administrations who are publishing about crimes. Any college campus that has a physical campus will publish this and send it out so you know how many crimes occurred on that campus, if any. What's the other one that stood out to me? Oh, Mothers Against Drunk Drivers. This organization goes through a lot of advertising and awareness, looking at the victims of drunk drivers and trying to prevent that from occurring. Even here locally, we had a law firm on New Year's Eve that offered to pay for rideshare fees for anyone who wanted a designated driver on New Year's Eve. Now, while not a specific organization targeted at victims, it is an attempt to create more victims from being created. And I think that's an awesome way to support members of society and draw attention to their law firm. So I hope you find this chapter as fascinating as I did. I look forward to having discussions with you about it. And as always, please reach out if you have any questions.